I'm totally in bed. I've been up since so early this morning. Oh shoot, sorry. I'm just getting my notes out for you. Come on. Okay. Sorry. Hi, Witchy Diva. I don't know why this YouTube just keeps on freaking out, but anyways, today was a long day. My court date was at like 8:30 this morning, and so I decided that I was going to kind of pay attention to everything and see what was going on. So at 8:30, I went into the courtroom, and it was interesting because all the defendants were actually on time, and except for Clement's counsel, all the counsel was there on time. She walked in at 8:42, 8:43, something like that. But today, Mr. Geraldine, on behalf of DCFS, their counsel was there. So I'm assuming that's probably why they were all either on time, and they were actually taking court seriously today. There wasn't this, boisterous laughing and them having a good time. They were actually just taking it seriously. So that was an interesting thing that I witnessed today. So the judge basically started off by saying, he did make a mention that because Bom's attorney, who I can't remember his name, turned in a motion as soon as he got there. He has this tendency to file motions when he gets to court instead of doing it in like a timely manner so that the court can address them and, on the court date. So I think that's just kind of one of his stall tactics on how he wants to prolong court and try to find ways to get the charges dismissed. But the judge started off by saying, I do not want a reiteration of what you have submitted. You can't walk in on the morning and submit supplementals. I received a lot of exhibits and declarations. It took a lot of time to go through, so when you address the court, don't reiterate. I spent a lot of time on it. So basically what he's saying is that he's done. Like, he doesn't want to keep going over the same thing. The last court date we had with the social workers, I don't know if you remember, but I talked about the Castaic motion along with the motion to dismissal. Shoot, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my computer just like totally freaked out. Oh, wait. I think it's on the wrong button. There we go. So there was the Castaic motion and another motion, which is a motion to quash. And each time I've gone to court for these guys, it's been the same motions, the same, things that we're talking about. So in reference to the Castaic motion, I'm initialing these guys as who they are because there are 4 defense attorneys. So DG, who's the defense attorney for Gregory Merritt, and his last name is actually Gutierrez. So Mr. Gutierrez wants additional discovery. He said DCFS and county counsel have been complicit in giving internal interview to prosecution. They said there's a derivative use letter of termination. They didn't ensure that the correct amount of context. Oh, so in the letter of termination, that's what it says. For Gregory Merritt, apparently on page 18 of 35, which it's a 35-page document, his termination. It was some of the reasoning for why he was terminated was because you didn't ensure that the correct amount of contacts were completed, and you were not able to verify that Clement completed monthly visits. So that was on. And then it said it was unclear there was a completed contact. So on his particular termination letter, it does state that. But what they're saying is that that the prosecution is using this information or this document in regards to why the prosecution filed the charges against the social workers. And then the judge said that there was no prohibition against reviewing the termination letter. And then, so we go back to Gutierrez, who says it's clear that there was a derivative in regards to the case. The DA should give more discovery. I filed a request for additional discovery or to remove the DA from the case. So what he's trying to do, and of course, the defense attorney for Bom agrees and cites the letter of discharge and internal reviews. And so the prosecution says no defendants can point to evidence that was derived from compelled statements. So what they're trying to say is that all the evidence that the prosecution came up with was actually from the internal investigation made by DCFS, when in fact it was not. And that is what the prosecution's saying, is that we came up with our own evidence. We found the evidence, we did our own research, and we came up with it based on the information that we found. All this information is a lot, it's different. So basically the judge said he spent a lot of time going over the declarations, briefs, and modified per each. Having done so, the court has written a ruling and wants to be clear and for any court to understand the rationale. District attorney used compelled statements. Counsel for DCFS employment termination compelled statements were used and in connection for criminal filing. So then the DA would now need to prove that they came to the conclusion outside of compelled statements in the Nix versus Williams case. This is where the precedent is. Inference has been made sufficient. The evidence was derived separately. So basically what they're saying is it's on the prosecution to show that they did that. And as of now, the court stands by the conclusion that evidence provided by the prosecution team that prosecution didn't use compelled statements, but rather their own evidence. He has reviewed statements and documents submitted in camera and agreed over any attorney-client privilege. So basically what he's saying is that he's no longer going to entertain this motion for the Castaic motion. He's pretty much done. He's like, I'm not going to entertain this unless you come up with something completely new that isn't the same as everything I've been hearing. He says, I'm not going to entertain it. And this was so that we can start moving forward. And then there was the next one was the motion to quash. So the defense attorney Gutierrez talked about Jessica Brown was a witness during preliminary hearings and spoke to her expertise, testified, and gave criticism when she referred to excuse me, Hadley, CSW Hadley, Supervisor Mary, and CSW Clement. They talked about CSW Dixon, who was closer to the case and wasn't filed against, like she didn't have any charges filed against her, but these defendants did have. So basically what he's saying is like, the defendants currently that have been filed against, but there's other people that should have had charges filed against them. And in regards to that statement is, yes, that's absolutely true. If the statute of limitations would have allowed for it, I was actually pushing to see if there was a way to go after a lot more people. Just so you know, I wanted to go after the gain workers and any worker that had any kind of knowledge in this case and didn't do their job. So it wasn't that we didn't try. At least on my end, I tried as little as I can do, because it's not like I have a lot of power, but I did have those conversations. I was pushing to try to see what we could do, if there was more we could do, and stuff like that. Definitely there was other witnesses that were complicit, and I'm sure Dixon was one of them. So they said Dixon was closer to the case and wasn't filed against, but defendants aren't allowed to see the documents used by Brown, Jessica Brown. 25% of Gregory Merritt's time went to administrative work. And this is the part where it's kind of like interesting, I will say. He said that Gregory Merritt supervised 200 children and was at 2 offices. And then they cited Chambers versus Mississippi and Vegas versus Alaska and the ability to challenge credibility. So what he's saying here is that Gregory Merritt, so at the time that this, during Gabriel's case, Gregory Merritt was supervising about 200 children and I believe it was 14 social workers. And that was between 2 different offices, the Palmdale office and the Lancaster office. Do not think for one moment that this is some kind of hero. Because now that he's citing that, oh, I was doing all this, he volunteered. He told somebody that he would do that. So he volunteered. You can't volunteer for something and then point to that as the reason why you didn't do your job. So, yeah, of course it was going to be hard, but you chose to do that. So, that was your, whoops, that's your bad. And in regards to Jessica Brown, so the defense attorney, Gutierrez, believes Jessica Brown, all her documents need to be turned over, even under seal, so that the court can take a closer look, if not provide access to the defense. There were other people closer in time that should be prosecuted. The defense for Bom said no one was further from the incident than Bom. He was fired and prosecuted because of what Jessica Brown found in internal investigation. Did receive termination letter with reasoning. Dixon was closer and committed a crime. Purposely didn't report injuries. And then the judge was asking how DCFS was compelled. Defense for Bom said Brown testified. Defense is entitled to her underlying thoughts and statements in her review. Attorney-client privilege. Her reports aren't for rendering advice. Her reports were there for determining who to fire and why. Middle ground. Court conducts in-camera review of reports. So he's saying, okay, well, we'll take it if you look at the stuff. And then they talked about this ruling that had done, it's called the Brady, only goes against prosecution, but DCFS aren't a part of the prosecution. All the defense joined. The prosecutor says they don't have the Jessica Brown reports. That person has not invoked the privilege with Brown. Brown hasn't invoked the client attorney privilege, and Miss Dixon isn't a worker or county employee. She's a private servicer. She made no recommendations about the employees. A DCFS attorney was annoyed because they said that they were annoyed with the defense because the DCFS attorney is under the county, whereas the district attorney is under the state. So the DCFS says DA acts like an arm of the state, not the actual county. Prosecution said the DA isn't under the supervision of the state office, and they talked about how Hadley was a DCFS employee and clearly applies to witnesses who have testified on behalf of the prosecution. Anyways. Judge ordered that disclosure of all reports. Sorry about that again. It's so annoying. So basically, the judge required that any documents or reports that were disclosed to the prosecution be made available to the defense. And the only, I guess, the DCFS county attorney did a request for quash in regards to work code sections 954 and 955. He did state that Brown is not persuasive because Fagan directed DCFS investigate and report on potential liability in regards to the DCFS. So basically, when they did their internal review, what they wanted to do is they wanted to make sure that what kind of culpability they had and what kind of basically like a hellstorm would lay down on them. So they were really worried about what was done wrong per se, but how it would affect them, because of course it's a government agency, and why wouldn't you be? So what they're saying is that the work code doesn't apply to Jessica Brown, since she did not work with DCFS in regards to the case. She was doing everything on her own. In her testimony, testifying to the general guidelines and procedures, someone familiar with DCFS. She was an expert in the fact that she knew how she worked with DCFS, not that not that she was an expert in DCFS. So the court decided they did not agree that her attorney-client privilege was waived. So even if if she had given expert testimony that was covered by the client-attorney privilege, that means that she then waived her attorney-client privilege. So because she didn't do that, her attorney-client privilege, if she has any, still remains intact. And then, of course, in all of this, one of the main things was that Gregory Merritt's rights were not being denied, and reports have not been proven to be exculpatory evidence. Prosecution doesn't have possession of reports. They may have compelled statements, audio tape of compelled statements, all material from investigation, along with notice of discharge. Any of that was turned over to the prosecution needs to be turned over to the defense, but not evidence that wasn't turned over. So basically, the defense is trying to get them to get the county council, the DCFS council, to turn over paperwork that is actually redacted and under seal, or that is covered by client attorney privilege, stuff like that. And they're trying to do that based on a motion of them being the prosecuting team, but because they're not joined with the prosecuting team, they are a separate entity that were called in because of this evidence and everything that's being thrown around. So since they're called in and they're not actually the prosecution, all these things that's being cited, it didn't apply to them. And so they only have to turn over evidence when they're like prosecution and stuff like that. They don't have to turn it over when it's still covered under client attorney privilege. At least that's my understanding of the whole thing. So court to quash motion of STE, which I didn't really understand, so sorry. Privilege waived on any information given to DA. Defense is entitled to all evidence, which is, yes, okay. So prosecutor says they provided all the materials. And then the defense, Gutierrez, requested that all the materials be filed with the court. DCFS said that they will refile because they said that they did it in the previous trial for Aguirre. And they asked if they would have to do it again, and they said, yes, you have to do it. This is a completely different case. So the prosecution will provide review for 995, and Gutierrez has an event coming up. So they were talking about getting depositions into writing and to explore further what can be done. And I think that they're kind of, I may be wrong, but I believe that the depositions would be for them to try to get some sort of plea deal. But Lopez has said that, put something in writing and I'll review it and let's see what happens. But as of right now, the court case is continued until April 26th, which is another 2 months from now, right? So, in all this, literally it took the judge, a nice chunk of talking and time to sit there and say, okay, I'm pretty much done with following these two motions, because it's been the same thing. It's been motion to quash and Castaic, motion to quash and Castaic every single time. It does not seem to change with these guys. But I think that it seems the Judge Lamelli is a little ready to move on this. We're all freshly back, from the Aguirre case still, and it sounds like he's ready. So the next court case coming up is the Fernandez case, in which, I'm sure we're going to see some interesting things happen there. But other than that, that's pretty much it for today, which was just the two. Sorry, I don't know how to make this thing stay on. So it's just the two things that we discussed over the Castaic and the motion to quash. So I know that they're all still trying to find a way to get the charges dismissed. But I don't. I feel like maybe they're just taking it a little bit more seriously now. Like, we've gone on this for a long time. They're not going to get those motions. They're not going to drop the charges. And we can only hope that we put enough pressure on the prosecution. And when I say we, I meant us, to keep them from making a plea deal. And let's ride this baby through, let's get them those 10 years, because we want to make sure that, we want to make sure that they understand that they can't do this. None of them. We got to make sure that we make that point come across. And I don't know that doing a plea deal will make that point come across. I think that will make them think that they can still get away with whatever, whenever. So, I mean, of course, yeah, it's horrible. But this is what we're paying our government officials to do, is to, I mean, it's so much worse today. Like, if I just turned on Twitter today and I was like looking at all the things that was being said about the government, and it's weird because I'm starting to like Rand Paul and he's starting to make a lot of sense to me. But just with all the things, you sit there and you look at them and you're like, really, these are the decisions you're making in regards to the people? Like, that's, I don't know. So I was telling Crystal and Paula earlier, and Emily, think about all the things that we're uncovering right now in regards to this case. And this is on a local level. This is on a county level. And you can see how convoluted and gross and muddy it is. Now imagine going up to the state level, right? Or when you get higher, how much more convoluted and gross it is. And excuse me. And then you become, you look at being a president, and then looking, are you going to cross? Sorry, my cat was trying to do something here. You look at the presidential level and see how muddy and gross everything is, and you just think, oh gosh, this is only going to get worse, because there's nobody actually cleaning anything up. Nobody's actually making these people actually do their job. So it's kind of hard to think that anything's going to change. And only thing I can do is hope. We can only try and push and try to make it work in our favor. I don't know. Do you guys have any questions? I know I said a lot, and it's a lot of like technical stuff. And it might get a little muddy in my way of delivery, so just let me know. I hope they make an example of them for other social workers. Yeah, me too. Oh, you're not on Facebook? That's fine. I completely understand, Witchy Diva. I've often thought about not being on Facebook myself. I just, I got you guys on there, so I want to make sure that, everybody on the Gabriel's Justice page knows what's going on. Thank you, Carrie. I'm sure you're a wise woman yourself, right? Yeah, so I kind of just do the Gabriel's Justice page so that way I can make sure that everybody, stays informed and stuff like that. Do I have any updates on the Fernandez case? Yeah, we're going on the 15th for her case. Of course, Witchy Diva. For Fernandez case, that is on the, I'm pretty sure it's the 15th. I'm just double checking on the page. Yeah, February 15th. I have it as 8:30 in the morning at the same. It's all the same judge, so it's the same department, same floor, and everything. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing what happens. It should be interesting. And then on March 8th, we have the sentencing for Aguirre, so we get to find out what the actual sentence is. If the Honorable Judge Lamelli is going to sentence him to death or life without prison. Oh, thank you, Witchy Diva. I don't often go to Apple Valley. It's so out of the way, but I always wanted to go to the Devil's Punch Bowl. I know that's over by there, right? That looks kind of cool. Yeah. I've driven by there once, I think, when I was on my way to Vegas for somebody's birthday. And it was, for some reason, we just stopped off there, by there, or through there or something. And I was like, I want to go there. Look for me on... Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you're on my Instagram. It's Burner Meow Meow, but I've been trying to keep it light and relaxing because it needs to be completely different. I think from Gabriel's Justice, I need to be able to have my own release and stuff like that. So I was able, me and my friend went over to the beach yesterday and just kind of walked the beach for a good couple of hours. I think it was like 5.5 hours. And now, Carrie, you're here on YouTube. Yay. We walked for like 5.5 hours on the beach and watched the sunset before heading off. And it was just one of those things that I really needed to do. Hey, Faye. Yeah, it was something that was really needed to do. But I caught some really gnarly sunset pictures. So if you get a chance, take a look. Well, I'm waiting for my son to show up and my daughter because it's my son's birthday. So I will be logging off. Okay. I'll be logging off. See you guys. Have a good night. And remember, if you see something, say something. And then also, like I said, if you get any kind of images or videos that have to do with children, do not send that to other people. Please report it to the authorities. It does not need... Do not spread images of children to each other. Like, it's just not... They got it. That's like a continual thing that happens. Like, they'll just be... how do you say... sorry, my brain is so dead today. Like usual, actually. They'll just be, you know... It just keeps happening, like, you know, just please don't. Okay, anything else, you can find me here. I'll be back on the 15th, or we could talk on Facebook. Have a good night, guys.